best reasons to get an intraoral scanner, probably the highest ROI appointment. And the reason being is it's so quick. You basically put a scan body in there.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenny and I'm a part of the education team at Medit. Nice to meet everyone. Today we have Dr. Ahmad here.
Hey guys, how you doing again?
So it's a pleasure to have you here. By the way, how are you, doctor?
I'm really good. Thanks for asking, Jenny. I just finished a full day in the clinic and
Oh,
ready to smash out another Medit webinar and
oh,
share some things. And always good to reflect on how I've used this technology in my own practice. But
oh.
it's been a good day. How have you been?
I've been doing great. The weather in Korea is getting cold and yeah, I'm fine. Okay, so let's talk about today's topic. So it is about how dentistry has changed it for the better, conventional to digital scans.
Yeah. And so really what I wanted to encompass is not just about scanning, but as the industry as a whole, as we've changed now into digital. And I feel like scanning is now into quite a mature market, I would say, especially with the hardware side. I wanted to give an overview of all the different positive impacts that digital dentistry and scanning has had on day-to-day clinical life. So I'm excited to share some things today.
Yeah, I'm sure today Dr. Ahmad will show us how digital treatment has changed work easier than the conventional way of daily practice. Okay, before we begin, I have an announcement. Ta-da! So, Medit has released Medit Link beta version.
Amazing. Cool.
So, we have an event with a MacBook Pro 13 with Medit Link. So, Dr. Ahmad, do you know how to win a MacBook?
How do you win a MacBook? I assume you take part of the Medit Link beta.
Oh, right. Very simple. I will tell you. It's very simple. So first, you download the Medit Link. Second, try it. Third, send us feedback to beta@medit.com. So try it out. And I will leave the installation link and the event page at the description of the YouTube video.
And don't forget, guys, Medit is the only scanner on the market that works with Mac. And those of you who haven't used a MacBook before, I would highly suggest you get into it. I personally got a MacBook just to use with my Medit, and I'm just completely switched from Windows completely. I mean, they're amazing machines. So yeah, look, a free MacBook Pro, that's pretty amazing. That's like in New Zealand, easily about $4,000 or $5,000. So exciting.
Yeah.
I have to go this far to be the same.
Don't. Last time you also went away. Okay, so this time is going to be a little bit boring to explain everything. So I will summarize up and tell you the important things. Okay. First of all, in the Medit Link, now you can sort all the data according to patient's list. It will be easier to categorize the data according to patient list. And second, for the Medit Scan for clinics. So first, a new feature, you can acquire high-resolution data by detecting prepared tooth automatically with the help of Medit's AI technology. And Smart Scan Review, it is a report that will just pop up to show insufficient scan area, amount of tooth preparation, occlusal contact, etc. So we can do some corrections before patients leave. So there are so many improvements that you will find it so convenient to use Medit scanners. And the last one is about Medit Scan for Labs. Now the program will automatically perform additional scans after calculating the optimal scan angles, and half arch alignment is also available. Wow, that's all about the improvements. Dr. Ahmad, have you ever tried?
The beta, I've played with the beta, yeah, initially. In particular, I was interested in the high resolution data processing, to be honest. I guess my main interest for that was there's a lot of questions about HD mode and whether it's worth using and whether there's any benefit. And now I think there's actually a clear advantage to using HD mode, especially in day-to-day, I would say, especially big cases that you want the best possible data. So no, it's been good. It's good to see that HD mode seems to have a purpose now.
Data processing time will become much shorter, right?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a good optimization, but also the data just seems like it says it definitely you can see better sharpness, especially margin edges and these sort of things.
Then why don't you apply for the MacBook event? You already tried it.
I already have a MacBook, but
Sorry.
I should apply. I'll get 2 MacBooks. That'll be great.
Okay. Okay, as always, right after the lecture is done, we are going to have Q&A session. So we've already collected all the questions through the email in advance. So we will cover those questions today. And if you would like to watch the previous webinar, you can visit our YouTube channel and Medit Academy. Okay, shall we begin, Doctor? Yeah.
Yes, let's make a start.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make a start. And today's topic is how dentistry has changed for the better. And I've been reflecting a lot, to be honest, over the past few weeks, preparing for this webinar about going from conventional to digital scans. And it's a transition that a lot of you will be able to relate with. I was quite fortunate about adopting digital very early in my career. But even in dental school, I was still trained on physical impressions. So alginate, PVS, Improgum. And it's very interesting when I think back to how we do dentistry now and all the advantages of how we do dentistry now compared to back in the day, especially as a dental student, a fledgling dental student who was trying to take impressions. Now, let's break the ice. A lot of you who may have been following this webinar series, welcome back. I'm going to bore you again with an introduction. Those of you who this may be your first video, welcome. My name is Dr. Ahmad Al-Hassani. I'm a full-time dentist in Wellington, New Zealand. And yeah, like I was mentioning at the start, I still work. I don't just lecture and do webinars. And I just finished a busy day in the practice today, much like many of you would have sometime this week. Now, I am a prolific scanner. So I have been using intraoral scanners since I graduated. I was very fortunate to get into private practice with my father. And we own and operate 39 chairs now across the Wellington region. And I have used basically every scanner on the market, including, of course, the Medit scanners, i600, i700, i700 wireless. i700 wireless in particular is the one that I find myself reaching to often, especially in terms of the Medit lineup. Something about wireless, I don't know what it is. At first, I didn't like it too much, and now I find it makes a big difference. Now, in terms of scanning itself, because I have all these different scanners in my practice, I can do things like this. And you might be thinking, man, his poor patients. And I totally agree. They put up with quite a lot. They're nice, patient people. But I can take a scan and with not just one scanner, but 6 different scanners, 5 different scanners, etc. And I can compare these scans between all the different companies. And what you could tell straight away is that all scanners for simple processes like a single crown are accurate. That is established. But what's differentiating scanners is you can see the software texture is quite a lot different, especially if I point your attention to something like this. This margin is quite different to this margin or the real life situation. And so we are finding differences in scanners, but for the most part, they are all achieving accurate results. And of course, you will most likely either have a Medit scanner or be considering a Medit scanner if you are watching this webinar. And no doubt, these are some of the best scanners on the market. These are scanners I reviewed many years ago. I started back in, I think it was 2018, reviewing these scanners and in particular the Medit ones. And yeah, I mean, you all know it disrupted the market, and it was kind of like the OG economical scanner option. Nowadays, we have a lot of different scanner options, but something that Medit has continued to do very well is work on their software. So why is dentistry better now? Why is digitization and using an intraoral scanner so much better than what it used to be? And this is a video I've played in one of the earlier webinars, and I can't help myself. It's a video that I've taken from social media on one of these meme accounts on social media. And it really just sums it up. You know, a lot of us watching this will be able to relate, especially I can relate in terms of my first ever impression on a patient at dental school. And you do have to think, you know, how did we used to do this so often? And I know we still do, but how did our patients put up with this? You know, it's especially these days, a lot of us spending a lot of time and effort and an investment to learn and upskill and become better dentists and have better communication. And then at the end of the appointment, you have to do an impression. And frankly, it's not a nice experience really for anyone. The dentists don't really like it. I know personally as a dentist, I didn't like doing impressions. And these days, there's just a better way. And I'm not going to bore you with this because I'm sure you've heard it before. But scanning, no doubt in my mind, and this is literature proven. There's so much literature out there now on scanners, on scanning, on accuracy, on trueness. And the literature is clear. Scanners are as accurate, if not more accurate, than impression material. And the reason for that is we always assume, you know, well, we have errors with scanning, but oftentimes, you know, you can have errors with impression as well, drags, air bubbles, all these sort of things. And the other thing is that what about all the steps involved to getting an impression to the lab? Oftentimes, or even to have something, a workable model for the lab, this impression has to be poured up. It has to be poured up in stone. The stone has to be mixed properly. Any temperature changes, any air bubbles in that. There's so many factors. And the reality is digital dentistry will save you a lot of money. It will save you money on impression costs. You know, Improgum and PVS and all these things cost a lot of money. And they're not cheap to maintain. They expire as well. And this is a funny joke that I have with anyone who trains with us, is that I always tell them, I want your impression material in your clinic to expire. All of it. I want it all to expire when you get a scanner. I don't want you to get a scanner and just have it sitting there in the cupboard. I want you to be using this thing. The other thing is that we all know time is money. And this is why dentistry is so much better now with scanners. Everything is faster. Everything is more efficient. Everything is more comfortable for our patients. We can provide incredible service for our patients. How many of you have had a call from the lab or the couriers that they lost your impression or they lost lab work and all these sort of things? And it's just frustrating, especially if it's a big case. If you have taken an impression for a really big case, like 12 crowns, 14 crowns, and it is lost in the couriers, this is a nightmare. This is really a nightmare. You have to bring the patient back, numb them up, take the temps off, retake it a hard impression, replace all the retraction cord, retemp, and simply this just doesn't happen anymore with scanners. It just never happens. And also redoing temporary restorations. And I would say this is for people that really get into digital dentistry and start to offer some form of same-day dentistry, either same-day crowns, same-day printables. As we all know, printing restorations is becoming more and more popular. And what about this? We forget that a lot of patients don't actually like having impressions taken, and they are genuinely impressed by technology like scanners, like milling machines, like printers. It is mind-blowing for them. And a lot of you don't realize that, or at least don't appreciate how much having up-to-date technology has an impact on your practice. In my own practice, I don't work in downtown in New Zealand or anything like that. I don't work in a very affluent area. On the contrary, my clinic is actually in one of the lowest SES areas or socioeconomic status areas, but we have carved out a name for ourselves as a really high-tech, highly high-quality treatment center. And part of this is the technology that we've invested in, because people, I'm sure all of us can relate, when you go to a clinic that looks high-tech, that looks clean, or anything, it doesn't even have to be a clinic, any shop, it helps you build trust and you're impressed by the facilities. And scanners and digital dentistry as a whole allow you to achieve this. One of my patients, he put a review recently on our clinic, and it's quite funny. He mentioned that these people have more technology than NASA and things like that. So these people, these clients, when they come to your practice, they will tell their friends, they will tell their family, and it is free marketing for you. The other thing about scanning, why is it so much better than conventional? And I know some of you out there are die-hard impression fans, and honestly, to each their own. But I will let you know that scanning makes hard cases so easy. And this is an example of a case that I shared last webinar. And if you haven't watched that, I recommend you do. Please watch all the webinar series, because I'm sure you'll get a lot of tips about how to scan these cases and what to avoid. But, when you look at a case like this, a single crown may be quite easy to take an impression of, but what about a case like this? If you were doing a physical impression, you would have to pack cord around each one of these teeth, and then a second cord, typically. A thinner cord, because usually you'll be doing, a dual cord technique. And then you will have to take out that thinner cord very quickly and put impression material in there and take the impression, wait 3 to 5 minutes, which, just as a comparison, guys, a scan of this arch, or even a quadrant, but let's say an arch, shouldn't take you longer than 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, with good practice and really confidence in the scanning process. Compare that to 2 to 3 minutes of impression material. It's crazy. And let alone the stress. If you have a gagging patient, can you imagine that, how much stress it is to have to take this impression, and you just pray to any, God that you may believe in, or anyone, that you don't get an air bubble, because that is a nightmare. If you get an air bubble, you have to repeat the impression. And then what about a case like this? It's just getting harder and harder, more crowns, more quadrant dentistry, more quadrant rehab. And honestly, I feel like for some dentists, because we hire a lot of dentists in our practice, the more confident they are at delivering something, somehow, it's like by magic, the more their books fill up with that particular thing they're confident in. And so if you dread doing quadrant dentistry because taking an impression of this is a nightmare, I guarantee you're not going to be offering this to your patients as much. And scanning just makes this so simple. I don't even have to think twice. There's nothing to fear. It's actually probably the easiest part of the appointment now, taking a scan of this. And of course, we have the much bigger cases. So this is when you're doing full mouth rehab. And I'm sure many of you who may be watching this can appreciate that this would be a hard case to take an impression of. Packing 12 light cords throughout all these preps, you have to get your DA ready with the syringe full of light body PVS or VPS, and it's really a nightmare taking an impression of these things. It's frustrating if you get an air bubble. It's frustrating if you get a drag. It's a big rush if you're not so confident. Impression material is everywhere, and then you pull it out and you just hope and you wish that everything's okay. Whereas with a scan, this is completely real time. This is not sped up, as you can see by the 1 times at the bottom there. This is basically completed in the time that it took me to talk to you about this. And in total, that's about 1 minute. If it's replaying now, as you can see, 1 minute to take a full arch scan like this. which just, it's a no-brainer why it makes dentistry so easy. And of course, a lot of you may be wondering, does this stuff actually work? And the short answer is yes. And if you're not convinced, I would highly suggest you speak to some of your colleagues that are scanning, or at least look at case reports and literature and all these things. But I can tell you from firsthand experience of someone who's been basically scanning for all his fixed pros for the past 7 to 8 years, I haven't looked back, and I've never needed to take a physical impression. There was never a time or a place where I needed to do so. This is a metal partial denture, and you want to do 2 crowns because, as we commonly see with these metal partial dentures, it is so common, you get this caries all around the abutment teeth, something that's very common. And so if you try to do this with physical impression, I can guarantee you it is a really frustrating case, because you have to take the plate or try to take an impression of the plate. You have to take the plate away from the patient and send it to the lab. Look, it's got some anterior teeth on there. The patient doesn't want to be without their teeth, and it's all quite complicated. And even cases like this are so simple. You can just scan the preps and take another scan with the plate inside the mouth, and then this is a slam dunk case. It's super simple, and I would highly suggest you watch the webinar before, or the one before that, where I went over this entire case and how to do this. And lastly, implants. Implants are probably one of the best reasons to get an intraoral scanner, probably the highest ROI appointment. And the reason being is it's so quick. You basically put a scan body in there, take a scan. Within 10-15 minutes, the appointment's completed, and you charge for your implant crown. An implant scan procedure, if done properly, is probably the highest hourly rate procedure in dentistry, and it's super straightforward and simple. And it's a real no-brainer to get a scanner. I get a lot of doctors that place a lot of implants, that restore a lot of implants. And to be honest, the scan and the scanner should be the first piece of equipment you buy after your surgical motors and these things, because you just can't work the conventional way once you do this way. Saves you time. PVS, and actually a lot of companies recommend Improgum. Improgum comes with its own stress, the stress of undercuts, of the Improgum getting stuck, etc. And all these dramas are just not existent with scanners. And then dentures. Dentures are one of those things that is quite interesting in digital dentistry, because it is picking up a lot of steam, and it's picking up, there's a lot of workflows now on how to scan these properly. And really the interesting thing for me is not to scan these. As you've seen my previous webinars, I have mentioned that I still, if I want a final denture, I will still take an impression of this, because I want a functional impression. But in saying that, when I take an impression of that, of this edentulous ridge, I then scan that impression, because I want that digital data. I want that data to be used in the lab. I want that data as a reference. The beautiful thing about digital dentistry is that everything is data on a computer, and you can always reference and go back to it. And we know this, I've mentioned this before, a lot of you may be frustrated with scanners. You may hear some horror stories from your lab. Guys, I cannot say it time and time again. The number one reason is operator error, and I highly suggest, I'm begging you here, to do some training if you're having issues with your scanner. You have to train, you have to learn how to use it. These things work when they're used properly. If you're not using the scanner properly, you're going to have a lot of frustration. And I never really want to hear dentists say that they take backup impressions. I mean, I've heard that a few times, and it's crazy to me. What's the point of investing in this technology if you're going to take a backup impression? So what else? So scanning makes the hard cases easy, but it also just makes life generally easy, because, when we reflect, this is a an implant impression. And only recently, a few years ago, I had to take a implant impression. And the reason I had to take one, and you would think, why is this guy taking one? He has every scanner on earth. But the reason why I had to take one was I mistakenly ordered the wrong coping. Instead of ordering a scan body, I ordered an impression coping. And of course, I'm going to blame my practice manager or my DA about that. No, I'm just kidding. And so I had this impression coping and I had to take a PVS impression. And I'm not joking, guys. It was a humbling moment. And it reminded me why I just can't go back to taking impressions. Yeah. Once you do scanning, you can't go back. I mean, it was a mess, this thing. And there was some impression on the patient's nose and their forehead somehow and under their chin, you know, when you press the impression material down. It was a mess and you just can't go back. Also, simple things like this. You can see this crown. I mean, look how easy it is to scan this. It really is this simple. When you get into scanning, dentistry is just more enjoyable. You know, by the time I'm finished talking, this crown prep has already been completely scanned. And if you're struggling with these sort of things, again, all I would highly recommend is you just do some training and get to the point where you never look back, where simply you can never think about using impression material again, because this is the better way. And as you can see, I always use retraction cord. You would have heard me talk about retraction cords a lot in this whole webinar series, routinely. And the fits are perfect. I mean, if you go on my Instagram, Dr.Ahmad Al-Hasni, or the Instagram tag is at Dr. Al-Hasni, you will see me doing this every day in my stories and posting about scanners and how they work. And it's just clear this stuff works and you can be 100% confident in it. And it just takes all this burden away from having impression material and having to do impressions, which are frankly a very annoying part of dentistry. Then there's full arch. Now, of course, still to this day, even with full arch impressions, you should take a verification jig, especially if it's a final, even when it is using a scanner. But I want to just inform you of one thing. Anyone who's restored a full arch implant prosthetic, and I know it's not a big portion of the dental population, but I want you just to imagine when we restore these, we have to put these scan bodies on each one of these implant positions. And sometimes, especially on all on X and all on 4, these implant positions are very distal. Okay, to avoid the sinus, etc. And, you know, you can imagine how annoying it is to have to take an impression of this, okay? Because oftentimes you will be doing, or you'll try to be doing open tray, hopefully. But if you're going to do closed tray, you can imagine how frustrating this is. And with scans and scan bodies, it is just so much easier, even something like this. I would say the key tip when you're getting into full arch impressions is to make sure you retract the soft tissues exceptionally well. And then if you want to really get into digital dentistry and you want to avoid verification jigs, you can use photogrammetry. And this is really only for people who do a high volume of full arch work. We personally invested in one. We got the iCam. And I'm not joking when I say this. Photogrammetry gives you accuracy within decimals of microns. You know, it's incredible. And you can basically go from scan to photogrammetry scan on the same visit and have a perfect fitting temp, and then straight away transfer to a final once that's tested. One last thing, why a scanner is so much better than conventional dentistry. Unlike impressions that scare your patients away, scanners have amazing software. These are, again, things that I've talked about previously, but things like orthodontic simulator. Dentistry is changing significantly. It's becoming more corporatized. Dentistry is becoming more competitive. And I don't know about you guys, very few patients walk into my practice and say, I want, aligners, or I want a smile makeover. Typically, I'm using as many tools as I can to increase case acceptance, to deepen their concerns, or at least show them the positive impact of this type of dentistry and how it can change their life. And these sort of tools, they're all in decent scanners, especially in Medit. It has basically every app you can imagine, and using them and learning how to use them and getting your hygienist to use them really helps improve your case acceptance. Even things like smile design, this has become routine in my practice. Any patient who's interested in any form of cosmetic dentistry, they're getting a scan, they're getting a face scan, and they're doing some sort of wax up digitally, and some sort of smile design appointment. And so these are the things that really help you close more and more cases. And lastly, it's a centralized place for all your patient data, which I honestly, it is so useful to have all your patient scans on the cloud and to be able to access them anywhere. So Medit Link, I would say, is by far the most favorable when it comes to this. And I'll mention why in a second, but when you open Medit Link, it gives you this cute dashboard. It goes over everything, all the different scanners. And there you have my statistics, how many cases, your working time. I don't know if that's in hours, maybe it is 756. It's a little crazy, but you can see everything. It gives you, it's almost like a practice management software in a way. It tells you how many cases are going in, how many are scanned, your working time per case, etc. And more importantly, when you go into this case box, this is really what I love, is that everything is stored on the cloud. And the cloud is very cheap. I think Meta are charging, I don't know, $5, $10 or something, or even less. I think it's a few dollars per month. Now, when everything is on the cloud, it means that it doesn't matter which computer, which desktop, whether you're overseas on a holiday and there's something urgent that you need to check, whether you need to access it on your laptop, your iPad, anywhere. It's all accessible. You can access your cases from anywhere. And a lot of scanners say they are cloud-based. And what that basically means for most scanners on the market is that you can share scans on the cloud, but the scans themselves are stored locally. Whereas with Medit, I teach and lecture a lot around in Australia, APAC, around the world, and it's just so useful, especially if you're lecturing, to be able to access your scans for your lectures anywhere without having to, carry your main clinic computer around, because all the scans are automatically sent to the cloud and you can just download them from the cloud. And this is all done very automatically. And this is the reality, guys. Most of us have scanners by now, I would hope, especially those of you who are listening. But I have to say, you are getting to the point where you are falling behind. The days of impression material are numbered. I strongly believe that. And it's going to be one of those things. I know in some regions of Australia that I've heard my friends telling me patients pick up the phone and ask, do you have a scanner? Or do you do like goopy impression material? And so it's becoming more and more common in our patients to request this. And so without a doubt, the longer you wait before you adopt this technology, you're just falling more and more behind. And then we open up CAD/CAM. We've talked about scanner, but scanner is just a little part of the entire process, because then you talk about CAD and Medit apps and CBCT and milling machines and printers, and it's just so exciting. It's never been this interesting to be a dentist. I strongly believe that dentistry has got to be one of the coolest jobs in the world. We get to use all this technology. And just interestingly, guys, there's been surveys that have been published where they survey patients, and this is just a little tidbit for your own interest, maybe, that 2/3 of patients would change their dentist to get treatment done in a single visit. And I am a big proponent of same-day dentistry. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to our practice. And we all live busy lives now. All of us are very time poor. And even if you reflect, you would pay more and you would prefer someone who would be able to do it quickly. And quickly means not having to come back. And there is a saying, the only thing better than free is fast. And it's so true when you look at all the different services around us that charge you a premium to be faster, whether it's delivery services and Amazon, etc. And of course, that leads us to Medit Clinic CAD, and Medit Clinic CAD is basically the new CAD software on the block. I highly suggest everyone uses that. And this is a really good way for you to just tip your toes into this CAD ecosystem and into CAD CAM and dentistry, because it's completely free. You're already scanning your patients with your Medit scanner. You can access this from anywhere. You can open any file and just practice and see what this is all about. And I've mentioned this in a previous webinar. The results speak for themselves. I really think that this entire CAD CAM business is reaching some sort of, maturity in technology. It's well established. It just works. We don't really need to discuss if it works or not. We just need to find the best workflows. And if you don't want to do it, you can utilize AI. There's a lot of amazing Korean companies out there. It's crazy, to be honest. I was recently in Korea, and it's incredible, the country and especially the city Seoul. There's a lot of incredible dental companies there. Dentbird is one option, and this is basically web-based, fully web-based AI crown designs. And they also do implant crowns, anterior crowns. And so this is the reality. I mean, dentistry is changing. You just have to embrace technology. We can see how much the world is changing with things like ChatGPT, AI, and all these things. And even things like face scanners. I mean, to me, anytime a patient has any case to do with their smile, whether it's a denture, full arch, whether it's crowns, veneers, I always take a face scan now. And there is no doubt in my mind, this is much better than taking a photo. Yes, the resolution isn't 100%. And some of you may be wondering, why is it so ugly in the teeth region? Our model here is very beautiful, but the teeth are not high resolution. And the reason being is that your intraoral scan, which is very high resolution, is aligned with those teeth. So really, it's just to get the face and the proportions and the smile and the interpupillary line, etc. And then we have 3D printing. 3D printing is a topic that I could spend hours speaking on, and I actually do. In a lot of our live courses, we spend a day or two just talking about 3D printing. And those of you who don't know what we use it for, this is an example: models, surgical guides, wax up splints, restorations of all kinds, single crowns, veneers, inlays, onlays. I would say, just briefly, that printing restorations in my eyes is still kind of like an indirect composite replacement. It's not a ceramic replacement, but it does work, and they do last a long time. And you can do things like this: prep, scan, design, print. And you can imagine that a case like this is exceptionally stressful to scan. It's exceptionally stressful to temporize. And with digital technology, it is so easy. For me now, after I've done my preps, the job is basically done. It's simple from that point onwards. And I'll leave you with this quote from Pablo Picasso, and that is, action is the foundational key to all success. And it is true. There is no point sitting on the fence anymore. I think all of us just have to take action, and you have to jump on board, because this is the way the industry is moving. The whole industry, all of dentistry, is digitizing at a very fast pace. And on that note, you've seen me mention it before, and you can see it here behind me. I run Institute of Digital Dentistry, one of the most popular websites for digital dentistry education and news and scanner reviews. And of course, if you want to learn more, just know that there are resources out there for you. You can check out our huge course library. We have courses on basically everything digital, and that is everything. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks to those who tune in every month. And now I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you for sharing all your tips with us, Doctor.
My pleasure, Jenny, as always.
I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
So today we have 4 questions in total. So let's start with the first question. Question number 1. At which point you think it's advantageous to do digital scan instead of taking impression?
So, when should you transition from taking impressions to taking digital scans? As I mentioned, I would say immediately. It's like they say, the best time to take action is yesterday. And I think for anyone out there taking impressions still for especially basic cases like crowns, bridges, single tooth implants, I think without a doubt, if I was you, I would buy a scanner tomorrow, do some research, reach out to colleagues. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help and guide you off the Medit webinar. It doesn't have to be on the Medit webinar. And yeah, I think it's just ASAP. The faster you get into it, the faster you invest, the more likely you're going to be confident with this technology, and the quicker you will basically stop taking impressions.
Okay, I still can't forget that you put the illustration of like running, trying to catch the digital scan with impression body. So
yeah, and it's really, if you're not adopting digital technology, I strongly believe you're falling behind. Sadly, I don't want to say that. I don't mean to be rude, but this is reality with how fast the industry is moving.
okay, so question number 2. How do you solve the issue when margin line is unclear and you cannot call a patient back to the clinic?
Right. So if the margin line is unclear and you've told the patient leave, how do you solve this issue? Well, there's no really easy solution, to be honest. I would suggest, like in our job, prevention is better than cure. Before you let the patient leave, you should always check your scans. Always. And you don't have to meticulously check everything. If it's a crown prep, just check your crown prep and the contact areas. So my best advice will be to make sure you control bleeding, retract properly, scan properly before the patient leaves, so you don't have the stress. But let's say it's a hard day, you ran out of time. We all have those days, including me. So if the patient has left and you don't want to bring them back, it might be a bit of a stressful patient. How do you control where the margin line is clear? Well, you can't really. That's reality. You can play around with the mesh or the scan on Medit Design and try remove the gingiva, but you will notice that it's quite difficult. And the reality is your lab will basically try do the same thing. If they can't see the margin line, they will just edit the mesh to where they assume the margin line is. So hopefully you have some nice clinical photos of your prep, and then you can estimate where the margin line is. But the reality is, if it's a big error, it is hard to do post-op. If it is a small error, like a little bit of retraction cord, your lab should be able to handle that.
I was just curious that, do you have your clinician, dental lab technician in your clinic?
Yeah, we have a lab. We never started like that. I used to just be myself doing all the lab work after hours. And now we have a full digital lab. It's actually IDD lab. And we have 5 full-time technicians now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, question number 3. How do you adjust prosthetic fit without checking it on the working model?
So again, one of those things where if you want to check prosthetic fit, the reality is the best way. And if you ask any lab how they're doing it, is a working model. So you have your scans, hopefully. So you should be able to print a working model. That's the beauty about scanning, again, is that you always have that data. Unlike an impression where You might throw away the impression and then it's gone. With scans, you always have that data. So if you're not using a model, really the only other way is using something like crown fit, but even that needs some model and some scans of the model, or at least the preparation itself. The reality is, if you want to check the fit, you either check it intraorally or you print a model and you check it on the model. That is the two best ways. And in particular, if you're trying to check fit, like I do all my crowns modelless, I don't print a model for all my crowns. I will be checking it intraorally. So I would mill the crown, check it. By experience, you will just become very proficient in designing crowns that don't need adjustment. But if you do need a bit of adjustment, I just fit it in the mouth, check it, and adjust chairside.
That means you prepped very well and you didn't assume any margin.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, I think the fundamental thing of all digital dentistry is preparation. It's a skill that we're taught in dental school. And even though we're doing things digitally, digital doesn't mean magic. And if you prepare well, your teeth and your preparation is of a high standard, the rest of the process is very easy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last one. Question number 4. How do you restore gold crown or PFG in your clinic? What is the workflow?
Oh, I haven't had to do a gold crown in a very, very long time because I mainly do ceramic like Emax or zirconia. But the workflow would be exactly the same. Scan, temporize, send it to the lab. I know there's a lot of digital labs out there that still do gold. And if they don't do gold, they can make a wax up digitally, and they can print that wax up out of a resin that can be basically casted or burnt out into a gold crown. So treat it exactly the same as all your other crowns. If you're doing it in-house, you won't be doing gold in-house because very few clinics have the equipment needed to make cast gold crowns. But if you're sending it to a lab, you just treat it as normal. No difference. Just make sure on the lab form, you select gold, and the lab will be able to handle everything else.
Okay, that's all about it for today. You'll be able to watch this webinar on our YouTube channel and Medit Academy once it's completed. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks again for having me, and I'll see you guys in the next webinar.
Bye.